You are looking live at the international headquarters of OffshoreInsiders.com on behalf of Sportsbook Review. I'm Joe Duffy, and we have the Sunday morning NFL Bettors Tailgate Party, which of course traces its roots back to the scorephone days of the 1980s. Critical betting information from OffshoreInsiders.com. Let's get straight to it. Of course, this information also great for the fantasy football player as well as the sports gambler. The Broncos and the Dolphins. The Broncos have a league worst 2-8-1 against the spread record and an against the spread margin of minus 7.5. And again, some of you might know that as the sweat barometer. That is how much a team does or does not cover by. Dolphins have the second worst against the spread margin at minus 6.4. An angle that essentially says a battle of two horrible teams go against home favorites or small underdogs is 148 and at 99. That would say to go with Denver. And, of course, this quarterback battle, if you want to call it that, Trevor Siemian versus Jay Cutler. Of course, the Denver's quarterback experiment didn't quite work well last week with Paxton Lynch, and we all know about the Miami quarterback situation. By the way, for those of you watching live, and it looks like, I don't know, maybe only 30 to 35% of our viewers are watching it live. A lot of you are watching it on demand and whatnot. But, folks, please definitely tell us, in the comments section, let us know where you are watching from, what part of the world, as we know we do have viewers all over the world. And that includes if you're watching even the rebroadcast over YouTube and Periscope, etc. Please just let us know where you're watching from. All right, the Browns and the Chargers. The Browns with the worst against the spread record in the league at 2-9, though only minus 4.6 points per game. That is tied for the fourth worst. So, yeah, they do have the worst spread record in the league. As far as spread margin, still pretty bad, too, but there are teams with a worse spread margin. Chargers are the top under team, going under by 4 points per game and under 7-4. The Texans versus the Titans. Houston still the top over team by a massive margin at 9.5, but under 3-1 the last four. 5 times exceeded the total this year by at least 14 points per game, but only once was with Tom Savage. So they're kind of, trending a little bit more as an under team after being an over team, but now with Deshaun Watson out, they've kind of been trending as an under team. Titans, despite a 7-4 straight-up mark, outscored by 27 points per game. Going against teams outscored by at least 24 points per game, yet at least 3 games above 500, 14-4. That would favor the Texans. So essentially, the Titans, their more advanced metrics, their points per game margin would say that they're a below-average team. Their straight-up record would say they're an above-average team. And the computer says to fade teams like that. I've said, if I were to come up, and I don't know if I've ever really come up with a list. I actually have written some articles and done some videos, but articles even before this YouTube thing was invented and Facebook was invented. I've done, some articles about the most important things in handicapping, and one loss record, straight up record, when it comes to sports handicapping is the most overrated thing, most overrated statistic, and that is the case here. In fact, the computer would actually say when a team, their points per game margin would suggest their straight up record is deceptive, you fade a team like that. And in this case, we would fade the Titans. Minnesota and Atlanta. And yes, thanks for those of you checking in. I am a couple thumbs up. Marcus, thank you. Again, if you do like us, whether it's on Facebook Live, whether it's on YouTube, or give us hearts on Periscope, etc., that says you want more of this, and it will help us when it comes to exposure. Minnesota and Atlanta, a game being played in my backyard. I actually know some people that will be at that game, but going with a team in a nice stretch of not turning the ball over is 166 and 114. All records are against the spread, unless we otherwise note. That angle in this situation favors the Vikings. Teams on at least a 6-game winning streak, yet getting at least 3 points, only 3-19 since 2008. That would say to fade the Vikings, and kind of another one of those angles that is really true in just about every sport. is listen to what the odds makers are telling you. Essentially, when the odds makers are saying, look, this team's red hot, yet they are an underdog, you do bet against them. And, Ryan, you're saying, well, no love for the Vikings. Well, we're talking about that game right now. Actually, there is plenty of love for the Vikings. This is a classic case of offense versus defense. Well, I'm going to contradict myself. It is definitely an offense versus defense matchup, but Minnesota's offense is a lot better than people think. It's not a pure offense versus defense matchup. Definitely the Vikings, heck of a defense, Falcons with a heck of an offense, but the Vikings really have the most underrated 1-2 punch at wide receiver with Thielen and Diggs, and I think Thielen is just very under. If you want to talk about the most unheralded player in the NFL, the kid Thielen is possibly that player, and the Falcons, in fact, will be without cornerback Desmond Trufant, and that's really going to hurt them when it comes to matching up against those wide receivers. Now, Trufant was hurt last year, and the Falcons actually played pretty well in that run, but there's no spinning it. He is a key player, and arguably in this matchup more than most, because he's going up against such an underrated twosome of wide receivers. Case Keenum, again, I'll be the first to admit my opinion of Case Keenum, and I've said it here on these broadcasts and among the weekly podcasts I do, is one with the Minnesota Vikings, Purple, FTW. It's on podcast 1. So we get a lot of exposure on that. But, I've been saying all year that I thought Keenum was one of these guys that's, clearly good enough to be an NFL starting quarterback. But if I were to list the top NFL quarterbacks, I'd probably put him around 25 or so. But look, this guy is having a tremendous year. Obviously, I'd put him more towards the upper half, just barely in the upper half. He's having a tremendous year, and especially on the road. His last 3 road games, Keenum, the cagey veteran, 108 passer rating. So he has played very well on the road. Now, when we talked about the defense, the Vikings holding teams to 0.6 yards per rush and 0.7 yards per pass below their normal average. Atlanta gets 0.3 more yards per carry than their opponent normally allows and 0.9 passing yards per attempt more. Vikings 8-3 ATS, second best in the NFL, and plus 5.3 points per game they're covering by, which is 5th best. Now, somebody, on my own YouTube channel, he likes to comment, and he basically says, your information sucks, but you're boring as hell, which is ironic because, I'm a comedic genius. But he says, put a little bit more personality. Do have a cute small world story. I talked about being on that Vikings podcast. As you can see, I'm no spring chicken, and I have somebody who's been a dormant Facebook friend for, literally since the early days, and went to school with him, grade school and high school in New Jersey. He lives in New York now, but even in the many years we've been Facebook friends, he's kind of dormant. He only posts every now and then. He does post a lot of political stuff since the last election. I think, 80% of the posts I've seen with him in the 10 or 11 years have been since the last election. But anyway, he sends me a message. Hey, Joe, was that you? I heard on the Vikings podcast. Yes, it was. So, small world out there. You never know who's listening. And who, hey, if there's somebody who's a long-lost friend from a part of my life, like a quarter century ago, just, let me know. It's always nice to hear from somebody who was a part of my life many years ago. Rams and the Cardinals. The Rams with the second best against the spread margin at plus 8.7. They are 7-4 versus the spread this year. Meanwhile, the Cardinals minus 5.8 against the spread margin is third worst in the league. Of course, they're going deep down into that quarterback rotation. As you know, I was never really a Carson Palmer fan, but clearly they just continue to plummet. And then the injury to Stanton and talk about the ultimate journeyman quarterback, although Blaine Gabbert did, these journeyman guys, they are capable of some flashes. But Arizona, really because of injuries at the quarterback position, number one reason why they've been so bad this year against the spread. Now here we go. Teams with a cumulative season to date against the spread deficit of 133 or worse are actually 73-48 against the spread, and that would favor the Cardinals in this situation. Similar angle, but based on average margin per game. So this would apply earlier in the season. I'll explain the difference between the two, but it's 284 and 206 against the spread. They would favor the Cardinals. So your free pick is Arizona. But the cumulative means, essentially that you'd have to have quite a few games under their belt. They're actually negative 133 total points for the year against the spread. So, therefore it's not like it would be after game 2 or game 3, but then there is another one that says a bad spread team based on margin per game, which it could apply in week 2, week 3. Both of these apply to Arizona, and remember what I always say, Arizona, the ultimate regression to the mean, the NFL, the ultimate regression to the mean sport. Your free pick from offshoreinsiders.com is to go with Arizona. And again, thank you. Do you see we have a pretty decent number of live viewers, but whether you are watching live or on demand, let me know where you're watching from, especially if we have any international viewers, because I do have a decent number of, a decent percentage of international clients. In the upper, about close to 10% of my clients are from countries other than the U.S. and even Canada. I have some international clients. So if you're watching this internationally, check in. I know SBR, sportsbookreview.com, definitely has a large international audience. So, especially those of you who are watching in another country, let me know where you're watching from. Tampa Bay and Green Bay, Jameis Winston will return at quarterback for Tampa. Tampa lost perhaps their two best offensive linemen, though, with Ali Marpet and DeMar Dotson. So Winston isn't going to have all that much protection. I know there are a lot of fans saying, look, they should, why even put Winston out there for risk him the injury with the offensive lineman out? This season's a lost season. The Packers are 1-4 straight up since losing Aaron Rodgers. If the Packers, it's very unlikely, but the Packers can make some miracle run. They could sneak into the playoffs, and I hear Aaron Rodgers is starting to practice. So, Packers are just hoping to go on a splendid finish to the season and maybe have Aaron Rodgers for the playoffs. So at least if people are looking for a team, and I think the most overused handicapping term in the NFL is this team is tanking it. It doesn't happen this early in the year. Keep in mind for week 16 and 17, we do have some angles where we see in certain situations teams do tank it. I'll give you a hint. It has to do with whether they're playing at home on the road. So I'm not going to say it's a complete myth, but this time of the year, teams do not quit this early in the year. But at least, Green Bay sort of has that little carrot there. Road teams off of a road loss do very well in a game that's expected to be close, 71-29 against the spread. That would favor Tampa. Now, however, Tampa running back Doug Martin is out. Last 2 years, though, he hasn't been very good. Just 2.9 and 3.2 yards per rush. So, Martin, a decent short yardage guy, but pretty overrated. Colts and the Jaguars, despite 6-5 against the spread margin, Jacksonville 7.8 ATS margin, a 6-5 against the spread record, I should say, but their ATS margin's very good. So they've been a good cover team, and essentially games they cover, they're covering by a pretty large margin. When they're not, they're barely failing to cover. The Lions and the Ravens, and again, join me at offshoreinsiders.com. What an incredible year it's been. 6-2 again yesterday. Check the website again. Well, let's do that. You got a couple websites. SBR odds, you most definitely always want to check for the latest odds. And as far as for your winning picks, offshoreinsiders.com, 163 and 104, our late kickoff game of the year goes among 4 NFL winners. We also have some NBA as well. And that's all at offshoreinsiders.com. And as you can see, SBR odds, the place to go, not only to make sure you don't get screwed by a line movement, but once the games get underway, great for scores in progress. And again, sportsbook review, I will not recommend a sportsbook to my clients or use one myself unless they get at least an A from sportsbook review, which is the ultimate place to go as far as rating sportsbooks. So every single sportsbook at SBR odds has been thoroughly vetted, and make sure that you always, check them out. The Lions and the Ravens, their last 3 wins were to Miami. And, lucky Luciano, the 3 pick of the day. I don't know if maybe you're confusing me with, another one of the other handicappers on SBR. I don't know if I do a three pick. We do have premium picks. Maybe you're asking the free pick. Well, make sure you watch this video from the beginning. We've actually given a free pick. I think he means free pick. We did give a free pick. So at the end of this video, you can go back and watch it on demand, whether it's on Sportsbook Reviews, Facebook page, our YouTube page, etc. We got a free pick. Lions and the Ravens. Ravens' last 3 wins were to Miami, Green Bay, and Houston. 3 teams that have their 7th-string quarterback in there. So, quite frankly, not impressive wins. Now, teams with a maximum of 5 full days rest versus an opponent with at least 8 full days, 48-38 against the spread. That would benefit the Ravens. So, contrary, a lot of people, of course, the Lions played on Thanksgiving. A lot of people think that is an advantage of Detroit, but historically it's not, where the odds makers really over-adjust. Now, that includes 14-8 if they're off of a win, and the much more rested opponent is off of a loss. So rest isn't as great as you think in the NFL. Don't outsmart yourself. Road teams that have been better on the road than at home are 118-78. That would favor the Lions. I will say, though, still, arguably, if I were to give the pros and cons of Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com as a handicapper, I would say maybe you could argue that too often I get a little bit caught up in merely the statistical stuff, and I watch enough football, and I also read enough from experts as far as personnel matchups are concerned, etc. The eye test just tells me Detroit is a better team. Look, it's a well-known fact that I'm not a big Matt Stafford fan, but hell, he's better than Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is, I don't even think he's good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. So the eye test does tell me Detroit here. 49ers and the Bears, big story here. Jimmy Garoppolo makes his debut for the 49ers at quarterback. Mitch Trubisky remains dead last among quarterbacks with a 52.8 rating. He has been sacked 19 times. Bears do hope to get inside linebacker Danny Trevathan back. Now, the Lions are the number 2 over team in the NFL. They've been going over by an average of 5.9 points per game, though they're the number 1 over team in terms of percentage. The record, they've gone over 8 of 11 this year. But, listen to this, Bears number 1 under team, going under by 3.5 points per game and under at a 7-4 rate. And as we know, the Bears offense is quite offensive. And again, please, if you're joining us in the middle of this live, give us a like. That will help us with exposure. That says you want more programming like this. As I said, I will always do. The multimedia has been very kind to me. I know a lot of clients have had for years, came up on multimedia. But as far as the Facebook Live, a little bit more of a commitment, the long story short, especially on an NFL Sunday. So please give us a vote of confidence. Like, comment, share. Like, comment, share. Giants in Oakland. Oakland wide receiver Amari Cooper is out. 42 catches in 11 games. Remember from that ugly incident of last week, Michael Crabtree is out with a suspension. 10 games, 42 catches. And yeah, the big story here, Geno Smith era begins with the Giants, the benching of Eli Manning. Eli Manning hasn't been very good. And from a pure look, we know Geno Smith is not he is a backup quarterback at best. I don't even know if he's an above average backup quarterback, but at least it gives a lift. And, I don't know if I want to make too much of a controversial statement here because it's a whole another story altogether, but I'm going by the theory that this coaching change by McAdoo was made because he wants to win back a segment of the locker room by giving Geno Smith a chance. So I actually do think that it can be a positive. It's certainly not a bad move short term from the Giants' standpoint. And they were struggling, so it's not, an unnecessary distraction is bad when a team's playing well. But in this case, they kind of have something to rally around. So I think we could debate, really, from a handicapping standpoint, whether that benefits the Giants or the Raiders. And remember, though, we're talking short-term, not long-term. And they're warming the seat for that young kid anyway. The Patriots and the Bills, Buffalo very banged up on offense, including top wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin. Of course, it was acquired from Carolina. 4 receptions, though, in 2 games since they got him from the Panthers. Their top 2 tight ends are questionable, as is wide receiver Jordan Matthews. So Buffalo with more than their share of injuries. Yeah, perfect time to have a bunch of injuries when you're trying to keep up with Tom Brady. Matthews has 24 catches in 9 games. Sunday Night Football. One of the better games of the day. That and the game that's being played here in Atlanta. Probably 2 best games from a standpoint of the non-better. Anyway, the Eagles got the league's best 9-2 against the spread margin and a league best 10.1 against the, league best 9-2 against the spread record and a league best 10.1 against the spread margin. Again, they're covering by an average of double digits per game. And I can look it up, but a team covering by that large of a margin this late in the year, I will tell you, is extremely, extremely rare. Maybe I'll remember to, look it up, especially if they maintain that. We'll have it on next week's show, 10 a.m. Eastern on Sportsbook Review's Facebook Live. Seattle tight end Jimmy Graham is questionable, 49 catches in 11 games. Look, Seattle, we know they're already thinned on defense. Richard Sherman leading the way. He's been out for the year. Now linebacker Bobby Wagner is expected to miss. Your top consensus plays, Green Bay, the LA Chargers, and Oakland. And it's, shocking, blame it on, global warming or whatever, climate change. But usually this time of the year, like I said, I've been doing these tailgate parties going back to the Scorephone days. Usually when the calendar hits December, really, November, weather is one of the more important things to look at. But there's nothing that significant, not even wind. So weather is not a big handicapping factor today. Well, again, follow me on Twitter, by the way, folks. Follow me on Twitter at Offshore Insider. No S at the end. That's Offshore Insider, but the website is Offshore Insiders, and make sure you join me live next Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern, for Sportsbook Review. Share, subscribe, comment, even if you're watching this on demand. And those of you who joined in the beginning, I know we picked up a couple viewers if you missed well, either way, watch it from the beginning. There is at least one free pick that we gave. We'll talk to you next week, 10 a.m. Eastern Time.